In the heart of West Africa, where the mighty Niger River carved its path through the lush savanna, there stood a village named Kumbi. This village, though small, was steeped in history and tradition, its roots reaching back to the days of the Great Mali Empire. The people of Kumbi were proud of their heritage, their lives intertwined with the rhythms of the land and the whispers of their ancestors. Among the mud brick houses and baobab trees lived a family that would soon be at the center of a tale that would be told for generations. Sundiata, a tall and imposing man with eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of ages, was the head of this family. His wife, Nana, was known throughout the village for her kindness and her skill with herbal remedies. They had 2 children, Kwame, their firstborn son, and Oma, their daughter who came into the world under the light of a full moon. Kwame and Oma were as different as the sun and the moon, yet their bond was unbreakable, or so it seemed. Kwame was a born leader, charismatic and strong, always at the forefront of the village's youth. He had inherited his father's imposing presence and his mother's charm. Oma, on the other hand, was quiet and thoughtful. She preferred the company of the village elders, listening to their stories and learning the old ways. Her eyes held a depth that sometimes unnerved those who gazed into them too long. As children, Kwame and Oma were inseparable. They would spend hours playing in the fields, chasing each other through the tall grass, their laughter echoing across the savannah. Kwame would protect his little sister from the other children's teasing, while Oma would tend to her brother's scrapes and bruises with the herbal knowledge she had gleaned from their mother. But as the years passed, a shadow began to creep between them, as subtle and insidious as the approach of the harmattan winds. It began on the day of Kwame's initiation ceremony. As tradition dictated, the young men of the village were taken into the sacred grove, where they would undergo the rites that would mark their transition into manhood. Kwame, now 18, stood tall and proud among his peers, his chest bare and decorated with the traditional markings of their tribe. Oma, 2 years younger, watched from the edge of the village with the other women and children. Her heart swelled with pride for her brother, but there was also a tinge of sadness. She knew that after this day, things would never be the same between them. The ceremony lasted for 7 days and 7 nights. When Kwame emerged from the grove, he was changed. There was a new hardness in his eyes, a set to his jaw that spoke of the ordeals he had endured and the secrets he now carried. Oma rushed to embrace him, but he held her at arm's length, smiling down at her with a mixture of affection and condescension. "I am a man now, little sister," he said, his voice deeper than she remembered. "There are things you cannot understand." Oma felt the sting of his words, but she pushed the hurt aside. She had always been able to read her brother better than anyone, and she could see the turmoil behind his eyes. Something had happened in that grove, something that had shaken him to his core. In the months that followed, Kwame threw himself into his new role as a man of the village. He worked tirelessly in the fields, hunted with skill that surpassed even the older men, and began to speak up in the village meetings. The elders nodded approvingly, seeing in him the makings of a future leader. But Oma saw something else. She noticed the way Kwame's hands would shake when he thought no one was looking, the dark circles that formed under his eyes, the way he would sometimes stare off into the distance with a look of haunted desperation. She tried to talk to him, to bridge the growing gap between them, but Kwame brushed off her concerns. "You worry too much, Oma," he would say with a forced laugh. "I am fine. Better than fine. I'm becoming the man our father always wanted me to be." Oma wasn't convinced, but she didn't know how to reach her brother anymore. She threw herself into her own pursuits, spending more time with the village healer, learning the secrets of the plants and the spirits that dwelled in the world around them. She found solace in this ancient knowledge, feeling a connection to something greater than herself. It was during one of her lessons with the old healer that Oma first heard the whispers. They came on the wind, soft and indistinct at first, but growing clearer with each passing day. The whisper spoke of a darkness growing in the heart of the village, of a betrayal that would shake the very foundations of their world. Oma tried to dismiss the whispers as tricks of an overactive imagination, but they persisted. She began to notice strange occurrences in the village. Crops withered in fields that had always been fertile. Children fell ill with maladies that resisted all traditional cures. And always, at the edges of these disasters, she would catch glimpses of her brother, his face a mask of guilt and fear. One night, unable to bear the weight of her suspicions any longer, Oma followed Kwame as he slipped out of the village under the cover of darkness. She tracked him through the wilderness, her steps silent as a panther's, until they came to a clearing she had never seen before. In the center of the clearing stood a massive baobab tree, its trunk twisted and gnarled with age. At its base, Oma saw a sight that made her blood run cold. A group of men, their faces hidden by masks carved to resemble terrifying spirits, were gathered in a circle. And in the center of that circle stood Kwame, his body trembling but his voice strong as he chanted words in a language Oma had never heard before. As she watched, horrified, the ground began to tremble. A fissure opened up at the base of the baobab, and from it emerged a creature that defied description. It was as if the darkness itself had taken form, a writhing mass of shadows with eyes that burned like embers. The creature spoke, its voice like the rumble of distant thunder. "You have done well, my acolyte. The sacrifices you have made have pleased me. But there is one final test you must pass before I grant you the power you seek." Kwame fell to his knees. "Anything, Master. I will do anything you ask." The creature's eyes seemed to glow brighter. "Bring me the heart of the one you love most. Only then will your transformation be complete." Oma had heard enough. She turned and fled, her heart pounding in her chest. She had to warn the village, had to stop her brother before it was too late. But as she ran, a root caught her foot, sending her sprawling to the ground. The last thing she saw before darkness took her was Kwame's face, looming over her, a mix of shock and something far more terrifying in his eyes. When Oma awoke, she found herself bound and gagged in a cave. Kwame sat across from her, his face illuminated by the flickering light of a small fire. He looked older somehow, as if the weight of his deeds had aged him beyond his years. "I'm sorry it had to come to this, little sister," he said, his voice hollow. "But you don't understand. The power this spirit has promised me, it will change everything. I can make our village great again, like in the days of our ancestors. No more struggling through droughts, no more watching our people die from diseases we can't cure. With this power, I can protect everyone." Oma struggled against her bonds, trying to speak through the gag. Kwame reached out and gently removed it. "Why?" Oma gasped, tears streaming down her face. "How could you do this? This is not the way of our people. This is evil, Kwame. Can't you see that?" Kwame's face hardened. "Evil? Was it evil when our father died because we couldn't afford the medicine he needed? Was it evil when half the village starved during the great drought? The old ways have failed us, Oma. We need something more. But at what cost?" Oma pleaded. "Look at what's happening to the village already. The crops, the sicknesses, that's because of what you're doing, isn't it?" For a moment, doubt flickered in Kwame's eyes. But then it was gone, replaced by a steely resolve. Sacrifices must be made for the greater good. "I'm sorry, Oma. I truly am. But your heart is the key to unlocking the power I need. With it, I can save everyone else." Oma felt a chill run down her spine. This was no longer the brother she had known and loved. This was someone, something else entirely. But as she looked into Kwame's eyes, she saw a glimmer of the boy he had once been, scared and desperate for approval. "Kwame," she said softly, "listen to me. This isn't you. This spirit, this darkness, it's using you. It's twisting your good intentions into something monstrous. But it's not too late. We can fix this together. Please, brother. Remember who you are." For a long moment, Kwame was silent. The fire crackled between them, casting dancing shadows on the cave walls. Then, slowly, he reached out and untied Oma's bonds. "You're right," he whispered, his voice breaking. "What have I done, Oma? What have I become?" Oma embraced her brother, feeling his body shake with silent sobs. "It's okay," she murmured. We'll make this right together. But their moment of reconciliation was short-lived. A wind howled through the cave, extinguishing the fire and plunging them into darkness. The air grew cold, and Oma could feel an oppressive presence bearing down on them. "Did you think you could escape me so easily?" The voice of the shadow creature boomed, seeming to come from everywhere at once. "You made a pact, Kwame, and now you must fulfill it." Kwame stood, placing himself between Oma and the encroaching darkness. "No," he said, his voice stronger than Oma had heard it in months. "I won't let you hurt her. I won't let you hurt anyone else." The creature laughed, a sound like shattering glass. "Fool, you have no choice. The darkness is already inside you. It has been growing since the day you first entered the sacred grove. Now, it will consume you entirely." Before Oma's horrified eyes, tendrils of shadow began to creep across Kwame's skin. He cried out in pain, falling to his knees. "Oma, run," he gasped. "I can't. I can't fight it much longer." But Oma stood her ground. She began to chant, calling upon the knowledge the old healer had imparted to her. Words of power, ancient and true, flowed from her lips. The air around her began to shimmer with a soft, golden light. The shadow creature howled in rage and pain. "What is this? How dare you challenge me, mortal girl?" Oma's voice grew stronger, the light around her brighter. She reached out and grasped Kwame's hand. "Remember who you are, brother," she said. "Remember the light within you. Fight." For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, the cave was a battleground between light and shadow. Oma could feel the creature's malevolent will pressing against her, trying to snuff out her light. Fight. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, the cave was a battleground between light and shadow. Oma could feel the creature's malevolent will pressing against her, trying to snuff out her light. But she held firm, drawing strength from the memory of every moment she had shared with her brother, every laugh, every tear, every whispered secret. Slowly, painfully, the shadows began to recede from Kwame's body. He gasped, drawing in great lungfuls of air as if he had been drowning. The creature gave one last, furious shriek, and then it was gone, leaving behind nothing but a faint smell of sulfur. Kwame collapsed into Oma's arms, his body racked with shivers. "I'm sorry," he whispered over and over. "I'm so sorry." Oma held him close, her own tears mingling with his. "It's over now," she said. "You're free." But even as she spoke the words, Oma knew that their ordeal was far from over. They had banished the shadow creature, but the damage it had wrought on their village, on their family, on Kwame himself, would not be so easily undone. As the first light of dawn began to filter into the cave, Oma helped Kwame to his feet. "Come," she said. "We have to go back. We have to make things right." Kwame nodded, his face etched with determination and remorse. "Yes," he said. "Whatever it takes. I'll spend the rest of my life atoning for what I've done if I have to." Together, the siblings made their way out of the cave and began the long journey back to their village. They walked in silence, each lost in their own thoughts, but their hands remained clasped tightly together. The bond between them, tested and strained almost to the breaking point, had emerged stronger than ever. As they crested the final hill and their village came into view, they paused. From this distance, everything looked peaceful, normal. But they knew the truth of the rot that had taken hold, the damage that needed to be repaired. "It won't be easy," Oma said softly. Kwame squeezed her hand. "No," he agreed. "But we'll face it together. As we always should have." With that, they began their descent, ready to face whatever consequences awaited them, ready to begin the long, difficult process of healing for themselves, for their family, and for their entire community. The tale of Kwame and Oma would be told for generations in Kumbi and beyond. It became a story of caution against the allure of easy power, but also a testament to the strength of familiar bonds and the power of forgiveness. In time, the village recovered from the shadow creature's influence, growing stronger and more united for having faced and overcome such a trial. And though Kwame had not literally killed his blood sister, the story served as a powerful metaphor for how close he had come to destroying everything he loved in his misguided quest for power. It was a reminder that sometimes the greatest battles we face are not against external foes, but against the darkness within ourselves. As for Kwame and Oma, they remained inseparable for the rest of their days. Kwame dedicated himself to serving the village, working tirelessly to undo the damage he had caused and to prove himself worthy of the second chance he had been given. Oma became a respected healer and spiritual leader, her experience with the shadow creature having awakened latent powers within her. Together, they led their people into a new era of prosperity and wisdom, always remembering the valuable lessons they had learned about the true nature of power, the importance of staying true to one's values, and the unbreakable strength of siblinghood. And on quiet nights, when the moon was full and the baobab trees whispered in the warm African breeze, the people of Kumbi would gather around their fires and tell the story of the brother who almost killed his sister, but was saved by love. It was a reminder to all who heard it that even in the darkest of times, hope and redemption were always possible, as long as one had the courage to reach for the light.